Hi, everyone, and welcome back to From Drift to Direction, the podcast where we talk about what it really takes to go from feeling lost to finding your path, from playing it safe to building a life that actually excites you. I'm your host, and today we're diving into something deeply personal, something that completely transformed who I am at my core. We are talking about how traveling and not just vacationing, but really traveling changed my entire perspective on life. We'll talk about how travel builds confidence, how it teaches you to take risks, and how it makes you more open minded and ambitious than you ever thought possible. If you've ever felt stuck, if you've ever wondered what you're truly capable of, or if you're just curious about how stepping outside of your comfort zone can change you, this episode is for you. So grab your coffee, settle in, and let's get into it. You know what's wild? We spend thousands of dollars on degrees, certifications, courses, and all these things we are told will change our lives. And maybe they do. But I'm going to tell you something that might sound a little crazy. The single best investment I ever made in myself wasn't a degree. It was not a certification. It was a one way plane ticket to Singapore with no job, no apartment, and a 90-day tourist visa that was basically a countdown clock to figure my life out. And I'm not saying everyone needs to do something that reckless, but I'm saying that the person I was before I started traveling, I don't even recognize him anymore. And I mean that in the best possible way. So today, I want to talk about how traveling, really traveling, not just vacationing, completely changed my perspective on life. We're talking about visiting over 65 countries, living across multiple continents, and reinventing myself so many times I lost count. And more importantly, I want to talk about what that actually did to me internally, how it built my confidence, how it taught me to take risk, how it made me more open minded and way more ambitious than I ever thought possible. Because here's the thing, this isn't just a story about cool places and passport stamps. This is about going from drift to direction. And if you're listening to this and you feel like you're drifting right now, this one is for you. Let me take you back to before all of this, before Singapore, before London, before any of it. I was comfortable. That's the word I'd use. Comfortable. I had a routine. I had a life that looked good on paper. I wasn't unhappy exactly, but I also wasn't alive. You know that feeling where you're going through the motions, checking the boxes, doing what you're supposed to do, but there's this quiet voice in the back of your head asking, is this it? I was drifting. I didn't have a clear sense of who I was or what I wanted. I had ideas, sure. I had dreams that felt too big or too unrealistic to actually pursue. I had this sense that there was more out there, but I didn't know how to get it. And honestly, I was scared. Scared of failing, scared of looking stupid, scared of leaving behind what was safe and familiar. So I stayed. I stayed in my comfort zone and I told myself that was enough. But it wasn't. And deep down, I knew it wasn't. I just didn't know what to do about it yet. Okay, so here's where things get real. I need to tell you about the first time I visited Singapore. It was just a vacation, a week long trip. I wasn't looking for anything life changing. I just wanted to explore somewhere new. But the moment I landed, something clicked. I remember walking through the streets at night, the city lights reflecting off the Marina Bay, the mix of cultures and languages around me, the energy of the place. It felt alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. And I remember standing there, looking out at the skyline and thinking, I could live here. Not maybe someday, or wouldn't that be nice? I meant really thinking it, feeling it in my chest. This deep, certain knowing that this place could be home. Before I left, I made myself a promise. I told myself, one day I'm going to move here. I don't know when, I don't know how, but I'm going to do it. And then I went back to my regular life, back to the comfort zone, back to the drift. But that promise stayed with me. It lived in the back of my mind for months. And every time I felt that restlessness creeping in, every time I asked myself, is this it? I think about Singapore, about that feeling of possibility, about the promise I made to myself. And then one day I just knew. I cannot explain it better than that. I woke up one morning and thought, this is it. This is the moment I've been waiting for. Not tomorrow, not next year, not when I have more money or more experience or more certainty. Now, this is the moment. So I started planning. And by planning, I mean I bought a plane ticket and I started packing a suitcase. I had no job lineup. Let me repeat that, no job. I had some savings, not a lot, but enough to survive for a few months if I was careful. I had a 90-day tourist visa, which meant I had 90 days to figure out how to stay legally, find work, and build a life. And I had no permanent place to live. I lived with friends for the first week, and that was it. And looking back, it was completely insane. But here's what I remember most, the fear. Not the excited, butterflies in your stomach kind of fear, the real gut wrecking, what the hell am I doing kind of fear. The kind that wakes you up at 3 a.m. and makes you question everything. I remember sitting on the plane and this wave of panic just hit me. What if I couldn't find a job? What if I run out of money? What if I failed and had to come back with my tail between my legs and admit that I'd made a huge mistake? What if this dream I'd been holding on to turned out to be just that, a dream and nothing more? But I also remember thinking, what if I don't try? What if I keep making excuses and never actually honor that promise I made to myself? What if I stay comfortable and safe and never know what I'm actually capable of? And that thought scared me more than failing. So I landed in Singapore. I was staying with friends, people I'd met during my first vacation, who told me, if you ever move here, you've got a place to crash. That gave me some breathing room, some stability, but it didn't erase the pressure. I still had 90 days to make this work. I still had to find a job that would sponsor my visa. I still had to prove to myself that this wasn't just a beautiful dream I'd wake up from. So I started networking every possible company I could think of. I told people I was looking. I put myself out there, even when it felt uncomfortable, even when I didn't know what I was doing. And then I got an interview, one interview with a company that felt right the moment I walked through the door. I remember sitting in that interview room, and instead of feeling nervous, I felt clear, like everything I'd done to get to that moment, the risk, the promise I'd made to myself, it all clicked into place. I wasn't trying to convince them I was good enough. I knew I was. I just had to show them. And I did. They offered me the job. One interview, one offer, and just like that, I had my foothold, I had my proof that I could stay. It wasn't luck, it was trusting myself. It was showing up fully, without apology, and believing that I belonged there. And when you move through the world like that, when you take the risk and then back it up with confidence, things align. And that moment when I signed that contract and knew I could stay, that was the moment everything changed. Because I realized something. I had taken a massive risk, and I hadn't just survived it, I'd actually pulled it off. I'd moved to a country where I barely knew anyone. I'd found work, I'd found a place to live, I'd build a life from scratch in 90 days. I'd kept the promise I made to myself. And if I could do that, what else could I do? That's what risk taking does. It doesn't just teach you that you can handle uncertainty, it teaches you that you're way more capable than you think you are. It builds this deep, unshakable confidence that no amount of positive affirmations or self help books can give you. You have to prove it to yourself, and Singapore was my proof. But here's the thing, Singapore wasn't actually the beginning of my journey, it was the turning point. I started in Cyprus, where the restlessness first kicked in, then London, where I discovered creativity and started exploring different versions of myself, then a cruise ship, yeah, a cruise ship, where I learned to adapt and thrive in complete uncertainty, and then Singapore, where I took the biggest risk of my life with no safety net. After that, New York, which taught me ambition, Chicago, St. Louis, other cities, other countries, other versions of myself, on and on and on. Each place gave me something different. Each reinvention taught me something new about what I was capable of. Here's what I want you to understand, you are not locked into one identity. We grow up thinking we have to figure out who we are and then just be that person forever. But that's not how it works. You get to reinvent yourself, you get to try on different versions of who you could be, you get to shed the parts that don't fit anymore and grow into new ones. And the beautiful part, I'm not done. I'll probably reinvent myself a dozen more times before I'm done. And that doesn't scare me anymore. It excites me. So let's talk about the open mindedness piece because this is huge. When I say I've been to over 65 countries, I'm not saying that to brag. I'm saying it because every single one of those places cracked open my perspective a little bit more. Before I started traveling, I thought I was open minded. I thought I understood the world, but I didn't. I understood my world, my bubble, my experience. And then I started meeting people, people from countries I couldn't find on the map, people who grew up in completely different systems with different values, different priorities, different ways of seeing the world. And at first, it was uncomfortable because when you meet someone whose entire worldview challenges yours, it forces you to question things you thought were universal truths. I remember having a conversation with someone in Malaysia who told me about their relationship with family, and it was so different from how I'd grew up thinking about family. And my first instinct was to think, that's strange. But then I caught myself, strange compared to what? Compared to my experience? That's not strange. That's just different. And that shift from strange to different, that's everything. I started to realize that so many of the things I thought were facts were just opinions, cultural conditioning, assumptions I'd never questioned because I'd never had to. Traveling didn't just show me new places, it showed me new ways of thinking, new ways of living, new possibilities I'd never considered. I met people in Singapore who taught me about work life balance in a way I had never understood before. I met people in London who showed me what community could look like. I met people in New York who redefined ambition for me. I met people in countries I visited who challenged my assumptions about success, happiness, relationships, purpose. And every single one of those conversations made me more open minded, more curious, more willing to sit with discomfort and ask questions instead of making judgments. It also made me more grounded because when you see how many different ways there are to live a good life, you stop being so rigid about what your life is supposed to look like. You stop comparing yourself to some standard. You start asking, what do I actually want? Instead of what am I supposed to want? That's what cultural immersion does. It humbles you, it expands you, it makes you realize that your way isn't the only way. And that's not a bad thing, that's a gift. So let's connect the dots here. Risk taking builds confidence. Every time you do something that scares you and you survive it, or better yet, you thrive in it, you prove to yourself that you're capable. That confidence compounds. It becomes this foundation you can build on. Reinvention builds adaptability. When you've rebuilt your life in 5 different cities, 10 different places, you stop being afraid of change. You start to see it as an opportunity instead of threat. You learn that you can handle whatever comes your way because you've already handled so much. Empathy, because you start to understand people on a deeper level. You see the world through more than just your own lens. You become less judgmental and more curious. And ambition, because you see what's possible. You meet people doing incredible things. You see different models of success. You realize that the life you want isn't some far off fantasy. It's something people are actually living right now. And all of those things together, they change who I am. I used to be someone who played it safe, who stayed small, who was afraid to want too much or risk too much or be too much. Now I'm someone who knows I can handle uncertainty, who knows I can reinvent myself whenever I need to, who knows that the world is so much bigger and more beautiful and more full of possibility than I ever imagined. And that's what traveling gave me. Not just experiences, not just stories, but a completely different understanding of who I am and what I'm capable of. All right, so I know where you're thinking. That's great for you, but I can just pack up and move to Singapore. I have responsibilities, I have bills, I have a life. And I get it. And here's the truth, you don't need to visit 60 countries to get the benefits I'm talking about. You don't need to move across the world, you just need to start. So, here are a few practical things you can do right now. One, start with one trip, not a vacation where you stay in a resort and never leave the tourist areas. A real trip. Go somewhere that makes you a little uncomfortable. Stay in a hostel or in an Airbnb, in a local neighborhood. Talk to people. Eat where the locals eat. Push yourself out of your comfort zone, even just a little bit. 2. Say yes to cultural experiences, even locally. You don't have to travel internationally to meet people from different backgrounds. Go to cultural events in your city. Strike up conversations with people who are different from you. Read books by authors from other countries. Watch movies from other cultures. Expand your perspective right where you are. 3. Take one calculated risk. It doesn't have to be as big as moving to another country with no job. But what's one thing you've been too scared to try? What's one risk that, if it paid off, could change your life? Start there. Prove to yourself that you can handle it. 4. Give yourself permission to reinvent. You don't have to stay the same person you were 5 years ago or even last year. If there's a version of yourself you want to become, start moving towards that version. You are allowed to change. You are allowed to grow. You are allowed to become someone new. The point is not to copy my path. The point is to find your own. But you have to start. You have to take that first step, even if it's scary, especially if it's scary. So here's where we've come full circle. I started this episode by talking about drift versus direction. And I think that's really what this whole thing is about. Before I started traveling, I was drifting. I was letting life happen to me instead of actively creating it. I was comfortable, but I wasn't fulfilled. I was safe, but I wasn't growing. And now I have direction. Not because I have everything figured out. I definitely don't. But because I know who I am, I know what I'm capable of. I know that I can handle uncertainty and change and reinvention. I know that the world is full of possibilities, and I get to choose which possibilities I want to pursue. Traveling didn't just change my perspective on life, it gave me a perspective on life. It showed me that life isn't something that happens to you, it's something you create, it's something you build, one decision at a time, one risk at a time, one reinvention at a time. And yes, I've been to over 65 countries. I've lived in 7 cities. I've collected a lot of passport stamps. But more importantly, I've collected versions of myself. I've collected perspectives. I've collected proof that I'm capable of more than I ever thought possible. And that's the real transformation. So if you're drifting right now, I want you to know something. Really hear me on this. You don't have to stay there. You don't have to accept a life that feels small or safe or stuck. You don't have to wait for permission or the perfect moment or until you feel ready. Because here's the secret, you'll never feel completely ready. But you're capable right now, exactly as you are. You can choose direction, you can choose growth, you can choose to invest in yourself in a way that actually changes you from the inside out. Maybe that's a plane ticket. Maybe it's a conversation with a stranger. Maybe it's saying yes to something that terrifies you. Maybe it's finally pursuing that dream you've been putting off because it feels too big or too unrealistic. Whatever it is, whatever that voice inside you has been whispering about, I want you to listen to it. Because here's what I know for sure, the person you're meant to become is waiting on the other side of that fear. The life you're meant to live is waiting on the other side of the dark side. And the only way to get there is to take that first step. You're capable of so much more than you think, so much more than you've been told, so much more than you've allowed yourself to believe. I know, because I've been exactly where you are, standing at the edge, looking out at everything that could go wrong, feeling the weight of all the reasons why you shouldn't. But I also know what happens when you jump anyway. The view from the other side, it's not just worth it, it's everything. So go, take the risk, book the ticket, have the conversation. Your future self is waiting. And trust me, he's going to thank you. Thank you for being here with me today. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear about it. Send me a message, share with someone who needs to hear this, or leave a review. It really does help more people find the show. And remember, From Drift to Direction isn't just a podcast, it's a choice. And you get to make that choice every single day. I'll see you in the next episode.